In the 1670s, Charles II rebuilt the medieval Windsor Castle as a pleasure palace in the new continental Baroque style. And because of his work at the Duke's Theatre, Gibbons was commissioned to work on it. This is the King's dining room, decorated with images of feasting, a visual celebration designed to glorify the restoration of monarchy. But the room's tour de force were the carvings by Grinling Gibbons. Drawing on his Dutch training, he created flowers, fruit, and sea creatures good enough to eat. Nobody in Britain had seen anything like it.
Suddenly, as if out of nowhere, a spectacular form of carved ornament burst on the scene. Wood that was carved with extraordinary realism and fluency. It became the blue chip style of the day and came to dominate interiors during one of the great periods of British building.
Visitors were bewildered at how Gibbons could transform solid wood into these forms. It was because he'd introduced a new technique for carving. Gibbons never worked just from a single piece of wood. His decorative pieces were constructed from many blocks or layers that he'd stick together at the end of the process. Steve Biscoe, like Gibbons, also uses this layering technique to create his limewood sculptures.
The first stage in carving is to trace the pattern onto the block of wood and cut it out. So we have to start separating the various flowers. But it's really just a case of working things down to the level you want. We eventually get to the point where we've separated the individual elements, so we now need to start putting the detail on the crocuses, and this is where it starts to get more skilled, and you have to take your time and be patient with this, because you can easily remove wood that you wanted to keep. Unlike a lot of carvers who kept the things fairly stylised, with Gibbons, you've got to carve it as close to nature as you possibly can, which is where you get the benefit of Gibbons' method of separating his carvings into layers, because although we can shape a lot of this from the front, what we really need to do is turn it over and get out from the back. So with it turned over, we can pare down to create nice sharp edges, and I have to be careful not to press too hard because the carving is getting increasingly more fragile now, and you have to be patient and not rush it, otherwise you hear a sickening crack. So this is a finished section of a Gibbons style carving, which would then be attached to the rest of the carving to create a whole floral spray.